60 Minutes recently drew criticism from left, right, and journalism groups for alleged lapses in its reporting about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his state's COVID vaccination program. The news program stood by its story. Today, we have a fascinating inside look at the legendary broadcast with award-winning producer Ira Rosen, whose book is called Ticking Clock: Behind the Scenes at 60 Minutes. Mike Wallace was notoriously difficult to work for. Was that your experience over the decades?
Horribly
Did
difficult.
you get used to it, or did you find you could sort of command your performance around him where it didn't hurt so much?
What I did was I went into a cone of silence. And when we were driving once down I-5 in LA, and he was yelling and screaming at me. A shoot didn't go particularly well. And he was ripping up my notebook, and he was throwing papers at me, and was covering the windshield. I couldn't see very much. And I began to chant a Buddhist chant, and just to get into the zone and away from the abuse that I was experiencing. He said years later, upon reflecting about how he treated his producers, he said, I was tough on them, but the stuff I turned out was first rate. And a lot of the producers over the years never really forgave him for the way that he treated, because no matter how good the work was, and it was great work, it didn't require him to be yelling at you and screaming at you and to go through that.
It may just have been that you were difficult, Betty.
No.
Not difficult, impossible.
Did you stay in touch with Mike Wallace up until his death?
I did. And at the end of the days, he had early Alzheimer's, and actually mid-level Alzheimer's. And he forgot that he worked at 60 Minutes. And it was so sad. Here was this amazing career that he went through, and he didn't even remember he worked there. The only thing he remembered was drop-shotting me in tennis and watching me chase the ball and fall on my face. And that gave him so much pleasure. And that's what he remembered at the end.
In some form or another, you've touched on so many major news stories that have happened. What do you know, if anything, about the Epstein case? Because more than a year after his death, I think a lot of people are wondering, do those tapes exist that some people think that he made of famous people in compromising positions?
Right. Well, I met Ghislaine Maxwell at a party.
She was his former partner.
She was, yeah, exactly. And so she asked me to drive her home one night, and she tried to seduce me. And it's not like it happens every day. It was sort of a memorable moment. And so obviously I didn't go there. But a few months later, I called her up, and I asked her, this is right before the 2016 presidential election. And I called her up, I said, let's go get a drink. We got a drink. And I said, I want the tapes of President Trump. I knew she was a Hillary Clinton supporter. So I said,
so you thought she had compromising tapes of Trump?
Yeah, that Epstein had compromising tapes of Trump. And she said to me, she put a finger in my face, and she said, Ira, I'm the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you have to do the other. Meaning, if you do Trump, you have to do Clinton, Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton rode on the, quote, Lolita Express plane like 26 times. And I said, I'll go wherever the story takes me. You get me the tapes, I'll do the story. I don't care who's on the tape. And she basically kind of acknowledged the existence of the tapes, but she didn't know where Epstein kept them. The other interesting thing she said during that drink was she said Epstein spends his time trying to live forever. And he was running around the world trying to figure out ways of preserving his body. And so I thought about that. Why would a guy who's trying to preserve his body try to kill himself? You know, he already beat the rap once in Florida. You know, he hired the best lawyers, he got off. Why didn't he think that maybe this could happen a second time? If he was so obsessed with living forever, preserving his brain, why would he kill himself?
So do you suspect that he didn't?
I suspect he didn't.
Journalism has changed, obviously, in the time that we've been committing it. What do you think of the current turn that it's taken? Is it for better, for worse, or a mix?
Well, I think it's for worse. The Washington Post, and I don't want to just say the Washington Post, because it was really all the media, was really tough on the Trump administration. Well, my view is they got to be equally as tough with the Biden administration, and I'm not seeing that. So that's what I like to see reporters do more often. And I'm not seeing the tough investigative work being done on this administration the way it was done on the last administration.
If you had to say in kind of simple terms what it is that made 60 Minutes work, what would you say?
Art of telling stories. But I kind of miss the old storytelling. I miss Harry Reasoner sitting there with the most expensive meal in the world, and you are sitting there with him as he's enjoying himself. I miss Morley Safer on the on the train through Europe, and seeing that adventure that he took there. I miss Ed Bradley telling a great spy story with 8 different stand-ups. And of course, I miss Mike Wallace confronting these miscreants. I mean, you don't get that anymore.
No, I have no intention of leaving until you tell me what's on your mind.
And Don used to say, you may not like all 3 stories, but I guarantee you're going to like one of them. And that's sort of what I miss. I miss the storytelling, the art of the storytelling with these geniuses.
Rosen says the backstabbing and competition among the 60 Minutes staff was as legendary as the personalities. He said that Ed Bradley once didn't speak to him for 15 years, thinking Rosen helped Mike Wallace steal a story idea from him.